Good evening, you're watching The Big Story with me, Haryanto Diman. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you will not miss a single episode. Will the Singapore Sports Hub become more accessible to the broader community for sports, lifestyle, entertainment and social activities? Well, that's the question on our minds following today's announcement that National Sports Agency, SportSG, will take over the ownership and management of the $1.33 billion facility on December 9th. Since 2010, the Sports Hub has been under a public-private partnership between the Singapore Government and Sports Hub Private Limited. Sports Hub Private Limited is a consortium currently comprising these three equity partners: Infrared Capital Partners, Global Spectrum Asia, and Cushman & Wakefield Facilities and Engineering. With more, I'm joined by sports correspondent Sazali Abdul Aziz. SportSG CEO Lim Teck Yin says that, quote, "It's not correct to say that the PPP failed, but what wasn't working in the public-private partnership that resulted in today's announcement of its termination?"
Well, SportSG referenced contractual limitations as playing a part in it. This is its decision, and this is largely tied to the plans it has for the entire Kallang area as it works towards the Vision 2030 plan it has for the entire area. This move allows for greater integration into the Kallang Alive project, which aims to make the precinct a buzzing sports and lifestyle experience, and also ties in with ambitions Singapore has to host world-class athletics and tennis competitions. This move will allow them more flexibility and freer rein to do what they deem necessary to achieve just that.
Although SportSG doesn't have to pay any penalties upon the termination of the arrangement with Sports Hub Private Limited, the government has to fork out an estimated $2.4 billion moving forward. Does this make financial sense?
Yes, it does actually. The sum is a very large sum, but it does make economic and financial sense in a sense that would have been very close to what the government would have paid anyway under the PPP agreement. In a nutshell, as Lim Teck Yin himself summarized it, we will be spending in the same ballpark for much more.
With the Sports Hub fully under the government from December 9th, what can the government do to make the facility thrive in serving national interests and turning a profit? Making it more accessible to the broader community was something that was brought up in today's press conference.
Yes, it was, and this will basically come in the form of more community engagement and sports participation at the grassroots level at Sports Hub facilities. Two examples Sports Singapore gave are regular Sports Hub open houses for the community, as well as the return of national school games to the National Stadium. We've had school rugby and athletics finals on occasion in the past in this facility behind me, but not every year since it was opened in 2014. So this could be something that we see a lot more regularly going forward. Perhaps even school football finals, which used to be played at the old National Stadium, which was torn down to make way for this one.
Saz, thank you for the sharing. That was the Straits Times' sports correspondent, Sazali Abdul Aziz. So, what facilities make up the Sports Hub? Among others, at the heart is the 55,000-seater National Stadium and the 100-plus promenade that encircles it, as well as the Singapore Indoor Stadium, the OCBC Aquatic Centre and OCBC Arena, plus Kallang Wave Mall, which has an indoor climbing wall. In a Facebook post, Culture, Community and Youth Minister Edwin Tong writes, "The Sports Hub is an iconic national sporting asset, the home of Singapore sport. It must therefore be more accessible, vibrant and open to a range of different activities and to a broad spectrum of our society." He goes on to elaborate on the timing of the partnership termination, saying the arrangement which we had with SHPL runs till 2035, but we always contemplated that we could take over earlier, which is why there's a provision which allows the government and not SHPL to decide whether and if so when to to terminate the arrangement earlier and assume ownership and control. In today's other headlines, Changi Airport Terminal 4 will reopen in September, and airlines that were previously in the terminal before it was closed in 2020 are expected to be relocated back. And in a further move to prepare for a full recovery of passenger traffic towards the end of the year, in October, Terminal 2's southern wing will open for departure operations. That part of T2 already facilitates arrivals. Now, these announcements come as passenger volumes in the first week of June hit 48% of pre-COVID-19 levels. Now, here's more from Transport Minister Iswaran, who was at Changi Airport today.
In Singapore, we want to make sure that we continue to be well prepared for this growth. The growth that we've experienced in the last 2 to 3 months has been far greater than what we had anticipated would be the case, although we had prepared for the possibility that the recovery will be quite sharp. So far we have been able to manage the volumes through our operations in T1 and T3, and also in T2 they've been accommodating in at least one part of T2 arrival passengers. So what we want to do now is really prepare for the next phase. And specifically what we want to do is to ensure that our airport operating capacity volume can be taken up to as high as 70 million passengers. That is at about the level we were operating in terms of passenger flow pre-COVID.
And slightly more than a week into Malaysia's chicken export ban, Singapore will see Asia's largest cultivated chicken facility being built in Bedok Food City early next year. California food tech firm It Just's Good Meat division breaking ground on its upcoming 30,000 square foot facility, which is about half the size of a football field. Cell-cultured chicken is meat from chicken cells grown in a bioreactor. Once operational in the first quarter of next year, the Bedok plant will house a 6,000-litre bioreactor, the largest one in the cultivated meat industry to date, and it will produce tens of thousands of kilos of the novel chicken each year. There's a crowdfunding campaign to help the victim of last month's Bedok North fire cope with medical expenses. Jenny Tan had lost both her husband and 3-year-old daughter in the blaze and was in ICU for 8 days before being transferred to a general ward. In an update by East Coast GRC MP Tan Kiat Hao, Mrs. Tan is finally conscious, but it's observed that she's not fully aware of and unable to respond to her surroundings yet. Started by a charity platform, Ray of Hope, the fundraiser targets to raise at least $100,000, with Mrs. Tan's medical fees expected to accumulate as she remains in hospital. Next Friday, June 17th, football fans mark that date as football icon David Beckham will be here as part of an Adidas event to talk about mental health and overcoming challenges. If you're interested in attending, Adidas Singapore is running a contest, giving away 20 pairs of passes. Now, more details can be found on Adidas's Instagram post. The Malaysian government has agreed to abolish the mandatory death penalty with a substitute sentence to be imposed at the discretion of the courts. The decision was reached following a presentation of a report on substitute sentences by the Law Minister during Wednesday's cabinet meeting. In the same meeting, the cabinet also agreed to further study the proposed substitute sentences. A US House committee investigating last year's Capitol insurrection opening its series of public hearings, which included Trump administration officials detailing that they did not believe former President Donald Trump's baseless claims of a stolen 2020 presidential election. Former Attorney General William Barr was among those who testified.
I saw absolutely zero basis for the allegations, but they were made in such a sensational way that they obviously were influencing a lot of people, members of the public, that there was this systemic corruption in the system and that their votes didn't count and that these machines controlled by somebody else were actually determining it, which was complete nonsense. And it was being laid out there. And I told them that it was crazy stuff and they were wasting their time on that. And it was doing a grave disservice to the country.
Mr. Trump's daughter Ivanka also says she trusted that there was no fraud in the election. In response to Mr. Barr telling Mr. Trump and his advisers there was no fraud, Ms. Trump says, quote, "I respect Attorney General Barr, so I accepted what he was saying." There are many lessons learned from the pandemic that will help educators respond effectively if and when another crisis hits. In an interview with the Straits Times, Liu Wei Li, Director General of Education at the Ministry of Education, shares key takeaways from Singapore's COVID-19 experience.
COVID actually disrupted quite a bit of education. I know it didn't appear that way because we managed to keep our schools open much longer than many other systems. But the big disruption was in the holistic development of our students. The disruptions was in their physical development. So for example, PE, camps, CCAs, these were all disrupted. And as a result, we can see that our students, the younger ones, are a little bit less coordinated when they come to us in school. We also see that the obesity rates have gone up. Second one is social emotional development. They actually have got fewer friends. And we realize that school is a wonderful place for learning in a social manner. So because of the disruptions to particularly CCAs, they've had less opportunities, and even in their class, because they're not allowed to mingle with their friends, the number of friendships that they have formed are much fewer. So social emotional part, we actually has lagged a little bit. And then the last one is leadership development. They have missed out on some opportunities, both at a level basis as well as a school basis, to actually practice and exercise their leadership development. But the brain being very malleable and we have time, we should be able to catch up with these. But there are some things that have shown us during COVID that they are silver lining. I think one impressed me was that our students are more resilient than we have thought. During the whole period of COVID, we didn't hear that many complaints, and the students just shouldered the differences, and they were able to persevere with their learning. The other thing that we have seen was the imagination of our teachers and the creativity of our teachers. And they have, in a short time, pivoted to being able to teach in a way that did not require them to be on site. And that is a very huge shift that they made in a very short time. We've realized a couple of things. One is that teaching and learning does not have to be tightly coupled. As in the past, you would teach in a classroom, the students are in the same classroom and they'll be learning. But now we realize that teaching and learning does not have to be in the same venue. All right, so you have home-based learning, the teacher teaches somewhere else. And now teaching and learning doesn't have to happen at the same time either. With our student learning space, the students have self-paced lessons, so they can decide to do it Monday morning, Monday night, Sunday, they can choose when they want to do it. And the third thing is that we realize that there are certain skills and certain competencies that we want them to have, like self-directed learning. And this does not need to be a set content or a set platform. So the student can choose how they want to do it.
There's more in this week's Smart Parenting pages online, including how changes to Primary 1 registration starting June 29th could affect your child. You'll find the story at str.sg/smartparenting. Those are our top stories today. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Haryanto Diman. Have a good weekend and see you next week.